The day my grandmother died, I lost more than a beloved family member. I lost my past, my future, and my faith in everyone I thought I knew. She was 94 years old, a force of nature who had built a multi-million-dollar real estate empire from nothing but determination and grit. She was my hero, my confidant, the only person in my family who ever believed in me. When she passed, I sat by her hospital bed, holding her hand, watching her take her last breath, and I had no idea that her death would trigger a war that would tear my family apart and reveal secrets that had been buried for decades. My name is Sophia Marino, and I grew up in the shadow of the Marino family legacy. My grandmother, Rosa Marino, emigrated from Italy with nothing but a suitcase and a dream. She worked as a cleaner, a seamstress, a cook, anything to save money. By the time she was 30, she had bought her first building, a rundown apartment complex in Brooklyn that she renovated with her own hands. Over the next 60 years, she built Marino Properties into a real estate empire worth over $300 million. She was a legend in the industry, a woman who had succeeded in a man's world through sheer force of will. I worshipped her. My father, Vincent, was her only son. He worked for the company his entire life, but he never had my grandmother's vision or her drive. He was competent, reliable, and utterly unremarkable. My mother, Linda, was a socialite who married into the family for money and status. She made no secret of her disappointment that I wasn't more like her, more interested in shopping and parties than in business and buildings. My brother Marco was the golden child, the one everyone expected to take over the company someday. He was charming, handsome, and utterly uninterested in the work required to run a real estate empire. He wanted the title and the money, not the responsibility. I was the odd one out, the daughter who actually loved the business, who spent summers shadowing my grandmother on site visits, who learned to read blueprints before I learned to drive. My grandmother saw something in me that no one else did. She took me under her wing, taught me everything she knew, and told me stories about the early days that no one else had ever heard. She trusted me with secrets, with fears, with dreams she never shared with anyone else. When I graduated from college with a degree in business and a minor in real estate development, she was the one who cheered loudest. When I started working for the company, she was the one who mentored me, who pushed me, who believed I could be her successor. She never said it outright, but I knew I was her chosen one. Then she got sick. It happened fast, faster than anyone expected. One day she was fine, the next she was in the hospital, and within 3 months she was gone. I spent those months by her side, holding her hand, reading to her, telling her about my day. In her final week, she tried to tell me something important, something about the company and the family. But she was too weak, too medicated, too far gone. She would start sentences and then drift off, her eyes fluttering closed, her grip loosening. I never learned what she wanted to say. I've replayed those moments 1,000 times, wondering what she was trying to tell me, what warning she was trying to give. The reading of the will was held in my grandmother's lawyer's office, a week after her funeral. The whole family was there. My father, my mother, my brother, and me. Also present were my Aunt Teresa, my grandmother's younger sister, and her 2 children, my cousins Dominic and Francesca. Teresa had always been jealous of my grandmother's success, bitter that her older sister had built an empire while she had struggled. She rarely visited, rarely called, but she showed up at every family event with a smile that never reached her eyes. I never trusted her. I was right not to. The lawyer, a gray man named Mr. Harrison, who had served my grandmother for 40 years, began to read. The room was silent, tense, waiting. He detailed the distribution of assets, the division of properties, the allocation of funds. It was complicated, as estates this size always are, but the bottom line was clear. The bulk of the company, the controlling shares, the flagship properties, all were left to my father. My brother received a substantial trust fund and a seat on the board. I received a smaller trust fund, a modest apartment in the city, and a position as a junior vice president with no real authority. My aunt and cousins received nothing. I sat in stunned silence, my world tilting on its axis. It made no sense. My grandmother had promised me, implied to me, led me to believe that I would be her successor. Why would she leave everything to my father, a man she had often criticized for his lack of vision? Why would she give Marco, who never worked a day in his life, a seat on the board while I, who had dedicated my career to the company, was relegated to a meaningless title? Something was wrong. I could feel it in my bones. After the reading, I approached Mr. Harrison privately. I asked him if there was any other document, any letter, any explanation. He looked at me with something like pity and said, "I'm sorry, Miss Marino. That was the only will. Your grandmother was very clear about her wishes." I didn't believe him. I couldn't believe him. I spent the next month going through my grandmother's personal effects, looking for anything that might explain what had happened. I found nothing. Her safe was empty. Her desk was clean. Her papers were in order, too much order, as if someone had been through them recently. Then I found it. A small, hidden compartment in the back of her closet, behind her shoes, that she had shown me years ago when I was a child. Inside was a single envelope, sealed, with my name written in her handwriting. My hand shook as I opened it. Inside was a letter, dated 3 months before she died, and a flash drive. The letter was brief, written in her shaky, aging hand. "My dearest Sophia, if you're reading this, something has happened to me, and I wasn't able to tell you the truth myself. Your father and your aunt have been conspiring against me for years. They want the company, and they'll do anything to get it. I've hidden evidence on this drive that proves what they've done. I tried to change my will, but they found out. I don't know if I'll survive. Protect yourself. Trust no one. I love you more than you'll ever know. Nana." I plugged in the flash drive with trembling hands. Inside were years of financial records, emails, and recorded conversations that painted a devastating picture. My father and aunt had been stealing from the company for over a decade. They had created fake vendors, siphoned money into offshore accounts, and manipulated the books to hide their tracks. My grandmother had discovered the truth and confronted them. They had threatened her, pressured her, and ultimately, I now believed, hastened her death. The stress, the betrayal, the fear. It had weakened her, made her more vulnerable to the illness that killed her. They hadn't murdered her with their hands, but they had murdered her just the same. I sat on the floor of my grandmother's empty apartment, surrounded by boxes and memories, and I wept. I wept for her, for the pain she had suffered in silence. I wept for myself, for the future that had been stolen from me. I wept for the family I thought I had, the father I had loved, the aunt I had distrusted but never imagined capable of this. And then I stopped weeping. I wiped my face, stood up, and made a vow. I would expose the truth. I would bring them to justice. I would reclaim my grandmother's legacy and honor her memory. The war had just begun, and this time, I would not lose. The flash drive was my weapon, but I needed a strategy. I couldn't just walk into a courtroom with evidence that implicated my own father and aunt. They had money, power, and connections. They would destroy me before I could even file a case. I needed to be smarter, more patient than they could imagine. I started by making copies of everything on that drive. Multiple copies, stored in multiple locations, a safe deposit box, a trusted friend's house, an encrypted cloud account. I couldn't risk losing the only evidence. Then, I began my research. I spent months digging deeper, following the trails my grandmother had uncovered, finding new evidence she hadn't lived to see. I learned that my father and aunt hadn't just been stealing from the company. They had been systematically looting it, transferring assets into shell companies, hiding money in offshore accounts, and falsifying tax returns. The total came to over $50 million stolen from the company my grandmother had built. The hardest part was pretending. I had to go to work every day, sit in meetings with my father, smile at my brother, act as if nothing had changed. I had to listen to them talk about carrying on Grandma's legacy while knowing they had destroyed it with their greed. I became an actress, performing the role of the dutiful daughter while secretly building the case that would destroy them. It was exhausting and terrifying. I also reached out to people I could trust. My grandmother had many loyal employees who had served her for decades. Some had seen things, suspected things, but had been afraid to speak up. I approached them carefully, one by one. A few agreed to help, providing additional evidence and inside information. One woman, Mrs. Patricia, who had been my grandmother's personal assistant for 30 years, told me things that made my blood run cold. She had witnessed arguments between my grandmother and my father, arguments where my father threatened to take what was rightfully his. She had seen my Aunt Teresa sneaking into the office late at night, copying files. She had suspected something was wrong, but had been too afraid to come forward. Now she was ready to speak. The investigation took 2 years. 2 years of living a double life, of smiling at family dinners while gathering evidence. I hired a lawyer, a woman named Rebecca, who specialized in white-collar crime. She was brilliant, fearless, and utterly committed to justice. Together, we built a case that would stand up in any court. We had financial records, email trails, recorded conversations, witness statements. We had proof of embezzlement, fraud, tax evasion, and conspiracy. We had everything we needed. The question was how to use it. We could go to the authorities and let the legal system run its course, but that would be slow and unpredictable. My father and aunt would hire the best lawyers and possibly escape with minimal consequences. I wanted something more. I wanted them to feel what my grandmother had felt in her final months, fear and the collapse of everything they had built. Rebecca proposed a different approach. She suggested we confront them privately, give them a choice, and let them destroy themselves. We would invite them to a meeting, present the evidence, and offer them a deal. Resign from the company, return the stolen money, and face no criminal charges. If they refused, we would go public. The choice would be theirs. I agreed. We scheduled the meeting for a Friday afternoon in the same conference room where my grandmother had held board meetings for decades. I arrived early, set up the evidence, and waited. My father walked in first, confident and unsuspecting. My aunt followed, her usual fake smile plastered on her face. They sat across from me, and I saw the moment they realized something was wrong. The room was too quiet. I was too calm. I didn't speak. I just pressed play on the laptop. The first recording was of my father talking to a lawyer about how to hide money from the company. His face went pale. Then came the emails, the financial records, the witness statements. I let it play for 10 minutes, watching their expressions shift from confusion to horror. When it was over, I spoke. I know everything. The stealing, the lies, the way you pressured Grandma in her final months. I know you didn't kill her with your hands, but you killed her just the same. The stress and betrayal weakened her, made her vulnerable to the illness that took her. You are responsible for her death. My father tried to speak. I cut him off. Don't! I have years of evidence. I have everything I need to send you both to prison for the rest of your lives, but I'm giving you a choice. I laid out the terms. Resign immediately, return every dollar, sign over your shares to me, and disappear from our lives. In return, I would not pursue criminal charges. You would walk away with nothing but your freedom. My aunt started crying. Ugly, desperate sobs. My father just stared at me, his face a mask of shock and hatred. You're my daughter. How could you do this to your own family? I looked at him, this man who had raised me and felt nothing. No love, no hate, just a cold, empty space where my father used to live. You're not my family. Not anymore. Grandma was my family. She trusted you, and you destroyed her. You made your choice years ago. Now I'm making mine. They signed. There was no fight left in them. My father resigned as CEO that afternoon. My aunt signed over her shares. They wired the money back, every penny they had stolen, plus interest. Then they walked out of the building, out of the company, out of my life. The news broke the next day. I prepared a statement. After a thorough internal investigation, Marino Properties has discovered financial irregularities involving former executives. Those responsible have resigned and made full restitution. The company is now under new leadership committed to transparency and integrity. The press asked questions, but we gave no details. My father and aunt disappeared from public life, too ashamed to show their faces. I became CEO of Marino Properties at 34. It wasn't the inheritance I had hoped for, but it was mine, earned through pain and persistence. The first thing I did was gather every employee and tell them the truth. Not the sanitized version, but the real story. I told them about my grandmother, about the betrayal, about the years of investigation. I told them that the company was now in honest hands. They applauded. Some cried. The years since have been hard but good. The company is stronger than ever. My brother Marco surprised me. After the truth came out, he reached out, apologized, and asked if he could help. He's now on the board as a real contributor. We're closer now than we've ever been. My father lives alone in another state, working a menial job. He writes me letters full of excuses and pleas for forgiveness. I read them, then file them away. I don't respond. Forgiveness is a process. Some days I think I might get there. Other days I hope he suffers. The legacy my grandmother built is safe now. The truth is out. Justice has been served. And I, Sophia Marino, am finally free. I walk through the halls of Marino Properties every day, past her portrait, and I feel her presence. She's with me, she always has been. I will spend the rest of my life making sure her legacy endures.